Every woman has a story, a journey to discovering who she is and finding her truth in the world. This is where women come together to find connection through sharing those stories and to help each of us answer the question, who am I? Without labels, without judgment, and without anybody else's expectations. Welcome to the story of her. What's your story?
Missy Delgado, thank you for being a guest on the podcast today. So tell us a little bit about you right now. Like, what are you doing with your life right now?
Okay, well, thank you for having me. I'm really delighted to visit with you and to be here today. My name is Missy. I was born Melissa, but they've called me Missy since the day I was born. I am a wife, mother, grandmother. I have two of the cutest little grandbabies ever and one on the way. So we have 3 kids and 2 grandkids. I've been married to my high school sweetheart for 29 years.
Wow.
Yeah. My husband and I have lived all over the U.S. and a little bit around the world. Love to travel, love to be outdoors, love music.
So tell me more about what it was like growing up. I happen to know you had 2 of the most amazing parents.
Growing up in my family was amazing. I feel very privileged to have had amazing parents. They've both passed away now. So I hate to say I had amazing parents because
they're still there.
I like to still think I have amazing parents. But I'm number 4 of 5 kids, the youngest girl. And growing up in my family was just really great. My mom had the opportunity to be a stay-at-home mother. And so I always had her there when I'd come home from school or, to run me to soccer practice or whatever it was. And she was just very nurturing and kind but very smart and funny. And my dad always worked in business in medical device sales. Mm-hmm. And so he had a lot of flexibility and could be at all of our sporting events and things like that because he could make his own schedule, basically. My mom instilled music in us. So I took piano lessons and sang and just did all the things any little girl would want to do. So
yeah, you had kind of an idyllic childhood.
I did.
How do you feel like that shaped your identity or helped you moving into adulthood?
I think it gave me a very strong foundation, and I'm aware of the fact that that's rare, and I'm very, very grateful for that. I never wondered if I was loved. I never worried about having a roof over my head or food. I always had people I could go to for hugs or advice. So I felt very secure. My parents raised us to love God and to know that we were God's children. And so there was a lot of peace in that too.
So are there any particular stories that stand out to you from your childhood that stands out to you that helps shape who you are?
One of my favorite stories was when I was about 4 years old. I was with my mom and siblings at an outdoor flea market, and I had gotten a balloon. And I was so proud of that balloon. And as any mother fears, as soon as their child gets a balloon, they're like, let us tie it to your wrist, And I said, no, I've got this. And I don't remember that day fully, but my mom told the story so much that I remember it. We were leaving and my balloon got loose and it flew into the air. And my mom said she just paused and was waiting for a total meltdown for me to start screaming, I want my balloon. And she said, I just stood there and watched it float into the sky until it disappeared. And then I looked at my mom and I said, that's okay. Jesus will catch it. And
that's precious.
I know. I love that story to illustrate my trust in God and in Jesus, that they would care enough for me to care about my balloon.
Yeah.
Of course, we know now as adults it popped and floated away. So.
Right.
But I love that story because
you knew from a very young age that you had a father in heaven and that Jesus was watching out for you and your balloon.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But your parents gave you that. And that is a beautiful, beautiful gift.
They did. Like, learning about God and Jesus Christ, the commandments, all those things, love one another. And family prayer was important. And, dinner time together was important. We all just really, really love each other. So we're lucky.
Do you ever feel like there are any specific expectations that were either placed on you, either by your family or by society, for what you would do or become?
I think in my family, the only real expectation of me was to be a good person, obviously grow up and be good Good being obey the laws of the land, keep the commandments, be a good person that gives back to society, to love others. After raising 3 teenagers, I look back on my life as a teenager, and it's interesting to me how much emphasis when I was raising teens was put on academics. We were constantly on them, but even we weren't on them as much as other parents were. And when I was a teenager, we couldn't log into an app to view our grades. Parents didn't have the password to get in and check what you got on that test, And so even though my parents were very smart, my dad was a college graduate, they didn't pressure us into having to be valedictorian or anything like that. Consequently, all 5 of us have graduated from college and use our degrees, but I didn't have that pressure to become a certain thing. Like, you have to be a doctor, you have to be a teacher. They just wanted me to be happy. Looking back, I think the only thing that was really expected of me culturally within my family was to find a good man to marry and have a family. But that was also one of my goals. And probably because I was raised that way and had a good example of a family that was happy, that's just something I really wanted. And so that's what I did.
So high school is pretty famous for its labels.
Yeah.
Right. And do you feel like you had a niche in high school, or that labels were put on you by other people? How did high school go?
I went to 2 different high schools. One was just outside Philadelphia. And then I spent most of my high school years in North Carolina, a suburb of Raleigh. And I did sports and choir. I think in general, I was just kind of a friend of everyone. I think if I had any label, it may have been a bit of a goody two shoes, kind of, though I didn't impress that on people. I let people make their own decisions and do their own things, but I wasn't one to go out and party, even though I was friends with the kids that partied, but they knew, just don't invite Missy to certain things because she's not going to come. Right. And there's a story of in high school, my senior year, this really popular kid came up to me and he's like, "Hey, Miss," people would call me Miss. "I'm having a party. My parents are out of town. You should come." And I was like, I don't know. I'll see. But I knew what kind of party it was going to be. And I was like, I don't know. I might have plans, but I'll let you know. And he's like, "What's with you? Why won't you come to our parties? You're friends with all of us, but when we party, you don't come." And I just kind of froze. I remember it was biology class. And I was like, that's a really good question. Why do I do that? Why don't I do that? And so all day I just kind of thought about it. That was 3rd period. And by the end of the day, I was just like, well, shoot, I'm just going to go to that party and nobody can tell me I can't. Why not? Why don't I go? And I remember it was math class. And so I pulled out a pencil out of my backpack, and the brand of pencil was Integrity. And that was the brand of the pencil, not like a pencil I got from church or from a bookstore. It was just Integrity pencils. And I sat and looked at that brand, and I just had an overwhelming feeling of, that's why, because I have integrity. So I didn't go to that party, but still friends with all the kids because I think they respected my choices and I respected theirs.
Yeah. I love that little moment for you that helped you understand who you were and why you didn't go. Because you said you were questioning, well, why don't I go? Why not?
Yeah. I mean, I was 18 years old and I was like, is this just my parents? Am I just repeating the things they say? I'm old enough. I can make my own decisions. Isn't this something that I can just decide to go? I don't need to do X, Y, and Z, but I can go to the party. And it was just a little, some people call them tender mercies or little answer to prayer that pencil said integrity. And I kept that pencil for so many years.
Did you?
Yeah, but that story is really one that sticks out to me from my high school days.
We also have Missy's daughter, Kate, here.
Hello.
And tell us a little bit about yourself really quick.
Yeah, so I'm Missy's daughter. I'm the youngest of her 3 kids. But yeah, I'm happy to be here.
I loved her take on this. What's the difference between roles and title or labels and titles? So if you want to share.
Sure, yeah. The nature of a label, if you think of a label in real life, it sticks to something. And so oftentimes I feel like labels are something that are stuck onto us, whether we intend for them to be stuck to us or not. But then a title is oftentimes something that we acquire or something that we accept for ourselves. A sport title, like a wrestling champion or something like that. That's something that you earn or that you acquire. And so I just thought that that difference was profound, that one is something that's kind of put onto us and one is something that we kind of accept for ourselves.
Are there some labels or titles that you have that you wish you didn't, or some that you have that you love?
I mean, I think I'll start with the positives.
Yeah.
I think like some of the titles that I really love are like the title of friend, that I feel like I can say confidently that I've been able to be a good friend to those that I've become acquaintances and friends with. And I think that that's a title that I hold proudly and that I want to continue to hold on to proudly. But then as for labels, I mean, I think like in my family, similar to my mom's upbringing, there hasn't really been anything that's been like pushed negatively onto my siblings and I. And so I think from like a family source, there's no real like negative labels that have been put on me. But I do think that like from peers, perhaps like in college or something with roommates or things like that, I think I can relate to my mom with the goody two shoes label, not wanting to go out and party or not wanting to, do X, Y, and Z. And, that might maybe someone's perception of me, but that's okay. Like we all have our own opinions and perceptions of each other. But yeah.
It seems like labels might be more other people's perception of us versus a title might be more the reality.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I was in high school, I was really, really, really smart. I got really good grades. I was really smart. Well, I got to college and I still got really good grades, but I wanted to get to know people and have fun. And I was very social. And apparently I was very ditzy. And so I acquired the label of airhead, and people had no idea I had straight A's and that I had graduated number 6 in my class. Like I got that label, but it wasn't anything about my reality. Have you experienced anything, either one of you, anything like that, where you got a label that was so off who you were?
For me, I'm blonde. I was born blonde and choose to keep the blonde as an adult. So yeah, people go, "Oh, you're blonde." I get it. But it's all in good fun, I think, But I did in my work life after my kids grew up and were out of the house, and a little bit before I started to work outside the home because I was fortunate mostly to stay at home and be there for them. But recently in my work, a leader told me that some of my colleagues think I'm unapproachable.
What?
Right? That's what everybody said. What? Because I'm very warm and happy and accepting. And I think anyone who knows me in real life would go, "What? You're totally approachable." But working in a virtual space, sometimes your messages, your emails, that kind of typed out messaging, if you write it with positive intent and good feelings, the person on the other end reading it can perceive it in a whole different way. And in that situation, perception is reality. And so even though I send a message that's positive and cheery, the person on the other end, if they're having a bad day or they're just someone who naturally looks for the negative in things, all of a sudden Missy is sending messages that aren't warm or allowing someone to reach out. And so when I got that feedback, I mean, really, I'm just good natured and kind of silly. And so you can call me a lot of things and it won't hurt my feelings. But when I was called unapproachable, that hurt. And I don't think my leader understands how hurtful that was, because I'm not unapproachable. I'm a team player and I help others, and I go out of my way to do things that aren't required of me just to help the team or the common good, to lighten someone's burden. And so for someone to label me unapproachable and have that stick has really negative effects.
Yeah. That brings up a really interesting point, though, that so much of our communication happens digitally.
Yeah.
How many times are we misunderstanding or applying labels like that to people simply because we don't get the full picture of who they are?
Mm-hmm. And I was fortunate that workspace was a little bit more casual and friendly. And so I just had to start using emojis. It's kind of, some people listening will go, "Oh, that's totally
Cringe
or immature, or, but certain sentences, when you write them out, you can understand that someone could misconstrue that. And so I became the master of the smiley face or goofy face, whatever, or a meme or a GIF to just convey to them that there was no ill intent in this message. Like, this is just business or just me being friendly. So it does help. So hopefully, if you find yourself in that situation, you can use emojis because they are helpful.
Yeah, they are. I think they're great.
Yeah, I love them. So
maybe there is some age barrier as well, or generational barrier between younger coworkers who might not recognize some of those things.
Yeah.
How about you? Anything else that pops into your head?
I mean, while both of you were speaking, the one thing that kind of came up in my mind, at least about like labels or boxes that I've been put into, there have been some instances in my life, like during college or during like professional endeavors, where I've been kind of put into a box and kind of told like, oh, you don't need to accomplish more than what you're doing right now. Or, like, and not even, it's a little bit, I don't know, maybe
like when
backhanded, or
like when you're trying to go above and beyond and do things a little bit better.
Or when there's been times where, I try and advocate for myself in certain situations where, no, I can do this and I'm capable of doing this and I have a desire to do this. But then there's people who say, no, like, you don't need to do all of that. Like, you're good here. This little box is what you can do. And so feeling kind of like caged in a way, kind of that glass ceiling where it's like, I could do more and go above and beyond if people would just let me, And so I don't know what exactly you would call that label, but I think that's something that, unfortunately, I, and I'm sure many other women and other people in the world, have experienced time and time again. So I'm still trying to kind of figure out how to navigate that, because it's still an ongoing problem, but it's definitely, it's challenging, to say the least.
It sounds like it. And it seems like one of those things where it's because other people can't see your potential, but you know your potential, which is actually a beautiful gift to be like, I can do more. I can be better. I guess the question is there a way to get people to see what we see about ourselves, or do we sometimes just have to leave the situation and find a new one?
I think you can definitely show them who you are, what you're capable of. And there just comes a point when clearly you're not in the right space. You're just not in the right soil to bloom. The good thing is that you can leave and go do something different that better suits you and your personality and your abilities. But it takes a lot of emotional intelligence and courage to admit when that's the case.
Yeah. It's easier to stick with the hard we know.
Yeah, true.
So why is it that you think we're so wired to put each other in these boxes? That we want everybody to stay in the box we create for themselves in our mind. You are this kind of person. You are this kind of person.
For me, I think it's people trying to keep me tethered. I'm a little tenacious, little courageous, entrepreneurial, brave. I do get scared and have to convince myself to do things sometimes, but I think other people are more comfortable with me being inside of a box where they can kind of control it. Maybe they don't want to see me succeed, or maybe they don't want to see me. They're worried I could come into their space, if you will, even though I would never do that aggressively or anything like that. But I do think people are more comfortable when they have things clearly organized and just kind of can anticipate what their reality will be with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think sometimes, and this is something that I'm guilty of sometimes, but I think there are times where we put people in boxes as a way to kind of compartmentalize and make things simpler for ourselves, to just go, oh, well, they're that type of person, so they're not going to do X, and, we'll just move on. And I think that sometimes it just happens subconsciously. And I think that that's something that, we all need to be more intentional about catching and seeing that, it's not right to put people into boxes and kind of, match them with stereotypes and not let them be able to express themselves and show who they really are. And so I think that that's something that, happens kind of naturally a lot of times in the world, but it's definitely something that I think all of us need to improve on at some point. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you have lived all over the world.
I have.
I think when I first met you, you had just come from living in Puerto Rico.
Yes.
Right? Like, how old were you when you moved to Puerto Rico?
I was 19.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were just barely married.
Yeah. I got married very young.
How long after you got married did you move to Puerto Rico?
Right away.
Yeah, like that week? Like,
yeah.
Boom.
Yeah. We had a little honeymoon. We honeymooned in Virginia because we knew we were moving back to Puerto Rico. So,
wow.
I was like, I'm moving to the Caribbean. I don't need a honeymoon. I'm going to live the honeymoon. So,
but you took two major life changes.
Yes.
And did them all at once. You got married and you moved across the country, across the world.
Yeah.
How do you think that affected you?
I was young enough to not be scared.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was like, ooh, I'm moving to a tropical island. I was at college in Hawaii. So in my mind, I was trading one tropical island for another. So it was all cool.
Is that how it turned out in reality? Did it feel very similar?
In some ways, yeah. But I mean, being a college student in a dorm versus a married woman in a duplex were different.
Mm-hmm.
I married a soldier. So it was a big adjustment going from being just a college student to A, being married, but B, being married to the Army.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big adjustment. But I think, looking back, I think it went well. I'm still here.
And you've moved a lot more. Do you feel like that constant change in your life, like constantly having transitions, has been something that shaped you or something that you had to work around?
Well, I really can't deny it. So it has shaped me. I've moved 22 times in my life.
Wow.
And at the time of this recording, I'm 47. So I've moved almost every 2 years for my whole life.
Wow.
It's all I know. It's after a couple of years, I get a little itchy and need to start cleaning out closets and figure out where I'm going again. The funny thing is only a couple of those moves have been my choice.
Mm-hmm.
I chose where to go to college, but as a kid, I never got to choose where to live. My parents did.
Right.
And as a person who's married, yes, I have some say, but when your spouse is the one who, if you want to call it the breadwinner or whatever, you follow their career too. And so I've been a trailing spouse. I'm naturally an entrepreneur. And so it's very easy for me to adjust. I don't want to say be a chameleon, but I can do what I love just about anywhere.
You can adapt.
Yeah. I'm very resilient, very adaptable.
Yeah.
Yep. And so are our kids because we've drugged them along.
So that begs the question,
mm-hmm.
Are you resilient and adaptable so you were able to do all those things? Or are you resilient and adaptable because of all of the moves? Do you think it shaped you into someone who was that way, or were you always that way?
That for me is hard to answer because I have been doing it since I was young.
Yeah.
I was born in Texas, but we moved when I was 9 months old. And then we lived in the same house for about 5 years, and then we moved again. And so even as a kid, that's all I've known.
Mm-hmm.
As a kid, it wasn't too traumatic because I had my loving parents and I always had my siblings with me. The thing that was most traumatic was like the first day of school, mm-hmm. when you wouldn't have the support of your big brother and sisters, and when you're just kind of there on your own. But so for me, I think it's been a lot of nature and nurture because I did it as a kid and I do it as an adult. But it's helped me to help my kids better, I think, because I understand.
You've been there.
Yeah, totally. But yes, for sure. Moving around a lot has made me very adaptable. I'm not really nervous going into new situations. I make friends easily. I connect with people easily. It's never really too daunting.
It brings up the question, is our identity something that we're born with? Or is it something that we choose that happens to us as we grow, or some combination of both? And where do you think it falls in that?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different definitions of identity.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on what listeners are looking for, the answer will be different. But for me, I know I was born a daughter to my parents. I know that my identity is as a child of God. I know that I have a Savior who suffered for the sins of all mankind. And I know that as a daughter of God, I can tap into that atonement to forgive my sins, and everyone in this world can. I don't want to get too deep into that, but that is where my identity lies. And so I look at myself kind of like a big pot of soup, maybe, where I'm a mom, I'm a grandma, I'm a friend, I'm a sister, I'm a musician, I'm a children's book author, I'm a graphic designer, I'm a nature lover, I'm a songwriter, I'm just lots of things. But the one thing that's kind of the piece that holds all those little bits together, those bits of vegetables and whatnot, is like the broth, the soup. And the thing that holds me together is my foundation in being a daughter of God.
That analogy is going to stick with me forever. I love it.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's the bulk of who I am. You might get a bite of the carrot or the celery or the onion, or I mean, if you get the garlic, that's the spicy part of me. I don't know. But I am just a mixture of all my experiences. I know in school they taught us that America is either a melting pot or a tossed salad. And that concept was always interesting to me, but that's really who I am, because as I've moved around the country and the world, I take the very best parts of what I've experienced. I call myself the friend collector, but I don't really have a better phrase for that. You're a friend I made when I lived in North Carolina, and I've kept. And I've met the most amazing people in each town and country I've lived in that are dear friends who, even though I've moved on from those locales, I carry them with me. Even if I don't talk to them every day or text them every day, they have left an imprint on my heart that has shaped who I am. Their stories, their struggles,
they've seasoned your soup.
They have seasoned the soup. Yeah, the friend who taught me how to make royal icing cookies, or the friend who lent me her car, her sports car, convertible sports car, after a drunk driver hit our family in our car. All these people have inspired me, supported me, and just been a really integral part of my story. And so they're the ingredients of the soup that is Missy. So
I think it's so interesting how you talk about things always with such a positive spin, right? Like, you've been that way as long as I've known you. Everything that happens to you, you can find a positive spin on it. And I think that is the bulk of how you're able to take your experiences and turn them always positively.
Yeah.
But I just love how you're talking about the fact that we're not just the sum of our experiences, but also the people who we interact with, and that they shape us and help us become new and become different each time that we go through challenges or trials.
Yeah. Relationships is what it's all about. And I default to the positive. I think that's just my nature. I've probably been that way my whole life, but I've had my fair share of hardships. I have had really, really low times. The untimely death of my mother, and my husband was traveling that day, and I sobbed in the basement because my kids were all asleep and didn't know they were going to wake up the next morning to not have a grandma on this earth. And so I've had some really, really dark times that I've had to work through and find the positives in. I lost my mom way too soon, but I had so many wonderful memories with her. I had the mom everyone dreams of having. Yeah. And we were close. We were best friends. And being my age, in my late 40s, I have a lot of friends who are going through caring for elderly parents. They have parents who have cancer or Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, things that are changing who their parents are. Their parents don't remember them. Their parents fall. They have big struggles. And my struggle was my mom was in the hospital for a couple days and then she passed away. I didn't have to visit her and her not remember me.
Right.
I didn't have to watch my mom go through chemotherapy.
All of that memories are good ones.
That's classic Missy, just trying to find the positive. It stinks that I lost my mother.
Yeah.
But she didn't ever have to suffer like some have to. So it's just finding the good in everything. Some of the moves I didn't want to make. But then when I get there and get settled and make new friends and find new flowers or find new foods, I'm like, wow, this is really cool. You know, I've traveled to 24 or 25 countries and seen amazing things. I didn't know I would love Slovenia so much. I didn't know I would love Malta so much. And the Netherlands, the tulips in the Netherlands, gorgeous. So just having an open mind and being open to possibilities, I think we're kind of getting away from the identity thing, but
it all is part of your story.
Yeah. My identity is kind of a globetrotter, or moss doesn't grow on a rolling stone. So I'm constantly doing something.
And what you're telling us about your identity is that you're someone who always finds the good and who finds the positive spin and keeps going and pushing through. And that is a good, powerful example for anyone, that it doesn't mean that bad things don't happen.
Right.
Right? It's what we do with them.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have any specific advice for someone on how to keep their self-identity through trials? Because it can be easy to lose ourselves in our grief or our sorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easy to lose ourselves in our grief or sorrow, but it's also easy to lose ourselves in the good times too. I look at people who have found celebrity status or success or money, and they lose themselves just as much, if not more, as if they were down in the dumps. So I do think it's important for someone to really take time to figure out who they are at their core. For me in particular, it's my faith. If you're not a person of faith, figure out just who you are. Who do you want to be? And live your life authentically to that point. But past that, when you go through hard times, you'll have to lean on who you are or the people who made you who you are. I know if I have a hard time, there's a core list of people who I can reach out to. And even beyond that, there's even a bigger list. Your core village, if you will, really helps you figure out who you are.
Yeah, it does. And you've collected a lot of friends. So your village is pretty big.
I have.
So tell me, have you ever researched your family history? And is that something that's important to you as you discover who you are?
I've been blessed with a family that has always taken a lot of pride in our family history. And so I've been raised knowing already who I am based on my family tree. My mother's side goes back to William the Conqueror and Henry VIII.
Wow.
My dad's side were pirates. I'm related to Aaron Burr. I have like ninth great grandfather who was a Mohawk chief.
Wow.
So it's just very interesting. I have a heritage of pioneers and people who sacrificed and worked really hard. And I really get into the nitty-gritty of loving doing good work. And I even enjoy a little bit of sacrifice sometimes, which is crazy, I know. But that's just been ingrained in me. Both of my grandfathers fought in World War II. And so we have a long history of family members who have served our country, including my husband, which I take great pride in. I consider myself to be a sort of veteran because I have supported him through his career. And I know I haven't personally faced hardship as, from a military perspective, but I have been on that road and dealt with my own battles. So yeah, I think knowing where you've come from and what brave people you've come from help you identify who you are and why you're here.
One last piece of advice.
Okay.
For women who are seeking to know themselves better or to find their voice in the world and get past the labels that everybody else is trying to stick on them. Like, what's your advice for them?
Okay. I think going back to who are you, I think it's important to be authentically you and not change who you are based on the environment you're in. So I was born in Texas, raised in the U.S. For a time, we lived in a surf town in California, and then we moved to the Balkans, and then we moved to Ireland, and I've lived in Puerto Rico, and I've lived in the deep South. I've played in a bluegrass band. I have done a little bit of everything, but I've kind of learned if I'm in California, I don't have to be a surfer, but I can be in the surf town. Like, I love flip-flops and I love the sun and I love watching surfers, but I didn't have to surf to be a part of that community.
Yeah.
And when I'm in the South, I love the culture there. And I'm still Missy, who lived in California, who's lived in Ireland and all those things, that I don't have to assimilate or become that. And a lot of times it can make me feel like I don't belong maybe, or I don't quite fit in, but I do because I'm authentically me. And so our family, because we've lived all over the place, we kind of joke that we have our own language because we've picked up colloquialisms and phrases from the communities or the different languages even. Like we say phrases in Albanian, even though we don't speak Albanian, but we just picked up on those. And so sometimes we'll use a phrase and our whole family knows what that means, but no one else does.
Right.
Or the other day I was on a Zoom call and I used the word rubbish. I said, well, after you're done picking up the rubbish, and everybody just died laughing. And I was like, yeah, you can tell I've lived in Europe. And so I just have these words that are just, I mean, what word is better than rubbish?
Right.
And so picking up on and keeping the best of everywhere I've been has helped to shape my identity because I feel like I've just kind of crafted this embodiment of good from everywhere.
Find the good.
Yeah, like a little tornado of good. Fun fact, I was born in Texas in the middle of a tornado warning.
For real. That's
For
crazy.
Real. Yeah.
You brought the storm to the world.
I am the storm.
So you have written the coolest book.
Oh, thank you.
I bought it for my kids, and I initially bought it for my 8-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And then I made my his older siblings read it too. And then we passed it on to other families. So tell us a little bit about your book and where people can find it.
Okay, thanks.
And why you wrote it.
Well, first of all, thank you for buying it. Appreciate it. I've always wanted to write a children's book. I love little people. I love kids. And I always wanted to write a book about emotions or feelings. And I wanted to do it for probably 2 decades, even before people really started talking about emotions or feelings. Thank goodness people are talking about emotions nowadays. But I always wanted a little book that I could use as a resource for my kids to explain why they're feeling certain ways. And it's okay to feel that way. And so I wrote a book called Moody Me, Moody, Me. And it just follows, I think, 7 or 8 little kids who are feeling different emotions. And each one has a color associated with it. So the little boy who's feeling happy is yellow. The little girl who's feeling mad is red, getting red in the face. There's a girl who's feeling shy, so she's pink, the color, her dress is pink and those kinds of things. Someone's bored, and so the color's gray because it's kind of a gloomy day outside. And it just associates, the pictures are so cute because it shows why the kid's happy, mad, or whatever. And my granddaughter loves the page of the little girl who's mad. She's actually kicked her teddy bear, which no one should kick their teddy bear. But my granddaughter goes, oh, she's mad. She kicked the bear. And I'm like, yeah. And the little girl who's sad, she has a Band-Aid on her knee, so you can tell she's gotten hurt. It's a great book to entertain and educate the youngest of readers, or even as adults, having that conversation with your older kids or yourself when you can go, wait, why am I feeling this way? I'm feeling anxious because, or I'm feeling sad because, and letting yourself feel that and not pushing it down, not having someone tell you it's not okay to feel angry. It is okay to feel angry in a proper way. Don't kick your teddy bear, don't kick your friends, but you can be angry. And so, Moody Me, it's been out almost a year and it has sold a lot more copies than the 2 that I thought it would sell. So I'm very grateful for everyone's support. It's available everywhere you can buy books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Yeah.
I'll put a link to the Amazon.
Thank you.
I think one of the things that's so beautiful about the book is that it gives parents a vocabulary to use with their children that both of them understand. So are you feeling a little red right now? Yeah. Remember the red picture? Oh, yeah, I am feeling a little red. Why are you feeling that? It starts conversations, and it's something that the kids the colors give them something they can connect to. Yeah. So my 8-year-old and I have had more than one conversation where I'm like, where he thinks he's mad, but he's really sad, right? And so it helps us to get to that. And so I'm like, are you mad? And he's like, yes. Maybe not, no, I think I'm sad because this happened. And so I'm acting mad. And so it's helping him progress through his emotions.
I love that.
So, because we're big in our house on anger is a secondary emotion. There's always something else behind anger. So if you're mad, why are you really mad? And helping us to get to that.
Oh, that's great. Okay, that's the title of my next book. Anger is a
I'm pretty sure that's some psychiatry thing that I got on a website somewhere. I cannot identify.
Well, I had someone message me. So in the book, there's a little boy in green pajamas with a green blanket, and he's not feeling well. So he's feeling green. You know, we all associate that with feeling nauseous or something. And so a person messaged me and said, I love the fact that my son can communicate how he's feeling by the color. He came up to me today and said, Mom, I'm feeling a little green. Aww. And she knew exactly that he didn't feel well.
Yeah.
And he maybe couldn't articulate. He had a sore throat or a headache or whatever. Yeah. But he's like, I'm feeling a little green. And she knew that he needed some care. And so it's just something I felt prompted and to write, and that was important. And so I'm really grateful that it was published and that it's out there for people to enjoy. Fun fact, the little girl on the cover is supposed to be my granddaughter.
Oh, I wonder.
Yeah. So I like to tell her that's her. And
that's
like,
you.
Oh. Yeah.
That's really cute.
Yeah. So my second book has been written. It's a little more, it's definitely more of a story rather than like a resource. And hopefully it'll be published sometime this year.
That's exciting. Yeah. So where would you prefer people connect with you or find you?
I think the best place is my Instagram. It's Missy Pyne Delgado _author. That's a lot.
And Pyne, spell Pyne.
Pyne. Missy Pyne Delgado _author.
Okay. Yeah. And we'll put that in the notes as well. Great. So thank you, Missy, for being on the show. And I am grateful that you were willing to do it.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Story of Her podcast, a story of her journey, her truth. Real women sharing stories of trial, triumph, and everything in between, with your host, Alicia Bake. One thing that really helps podcasters reach a wider audience is when you follow the show or hit that like or share button or even leave a review. If you'd be willing to do any of those things for me, I would really appreciate it. I'd love to get this message to a broader audience of women. Thanks a lot.